Reese was driving his bride home when their car suddenly came under gunfire. He slammed on the brakes and told his bride to duck down in the passenger seat. Watching this unfold, the sniper Harmon couldn't have been happier and immediately fired a second shot at Reese. But his aim wasn't very good. Both shots hit the car door, which even made him think there was something wrong with the rifle. After a quick check, Harmon chambered another round. Taking advantage of the moment, Reese told his bride to stay hidden in the car while he ran straight toward the sniper. For some reason, the sniper turned and ran. One chased while the other fled, and they soon ended up near an oil drilling platform. The moment Reese spotted Harmon there, he instantly went on high alert. He raised his gun and searched for Harmon, only to be ambushed when Harmon suddenly charged out from hiding. The two immediately grappled with each other. Being younger and stronger, Reese landed an elbow strike and knocked a fuel barrel over beside Harmon. When he saw gasoline soaking Harmon's entire body, Reese suddenly got an idea. He pulled out a lighter and tossed it directly at Harmon. In an instant, Harmon was engulfed in flames. Meanwhile, Reese ducked behind a nearby dirt mound and avoided the explosion. But what kind of grudge could make Harmon try to kill Reese on his wedding day? To understand that, we have to go back 4 days earlier. Reese was a supervisor for an oil company, and with his wedding approaching, he took the day off and headed home. When he spotted a stray dog at the worksite, he felt sorry for it. After getting his girlfriend's approval, Reese decided to bring the dog home as well. With the little pup riding along, the drive home felt much less lonely, but it was still a stray dog. Reese fed it a little too much, and the poor thing ended up getting sick and throwing up in the truck. Seeing this, Reese quickly stopped at a restroom to clean the dog up, but right then, he heard something strange outside. When Reese carefully cracked the door open, the headlights outside were so bright he could barely open his eyes. Sensing trouble, Reese quickly hid with the dog inside one of the restroom stalls. He had clearly heard people come inside, yet after waiting for a long time, everything suddenly went silent. He quietly lay down on the floor and peeked outside. Reese wanted to call the police, but accidentally dropped some coins from his pocket. The coins clattered loudly across the floor, and someone outside immediately told Reese to come out. After checking himself over, Reese realized he couldn't find his phone because he had left it in the truck. Thinking the people outside were robbers, Reese shouted that he didn't have any money and that the most valuable thing he owned was his truck key. He tossed the key out, hoping to avoid trouble by giving it up. When nobody responded, Reese could only pull out the small knife he carried for protection. Before he could react, the door was kicked open. The attackers tried to take the knife away, but Reese managed to stab one of them in the leg. What followed was a brutal beating for both Reese and the dog. By the time Reese woke up, it was already the next day. Seeing the dog barely hanging on, Reese immediately drove to the town's veterinary clinic. The veterinarian Amy saw the condition Reese was in and quickly asked what had happened to him and the dog. Still shaken and struggling to explain himself, Reese only managed to say that someone had beaten the dog. Amy said she needed an hour to treat the dog. During that time, Reese could head to the motel around the corner, take a shower, and clear his head, especially since he was covered in injuries himself. After arriving at the motel, Reese looked at himself in the mirror and finally realized just how terrible he looked. So he quickly cleaned himself up. Meanwhile, Amy called the sheriff. She believed Reese had been assaulted and might need help, so she asked the sheriff to come investigate. After hearing the situation, the sheriff agreed. By then, Reese had finished cleaning up and was preparing to return to the clinic. On the way, he noticed a vehicle fitted with powerful auxiliary lights, instantly reminding him of the blinding headlights from the night before. Just then, the vehicle's owner walked out, and Reese asked what the lights were used for.
Deer spot. You shine that light in a buck's eyes, and they just freeze.
Reese quietly remembered the answer and then stopped at a diner for lunch, wolfing down his food. At that moment, he received a text from his girlfriend asking where he was. Not knowing how to explain everything, Reese brushed the question aside. After replying, Reese looked around at the other customers, and every face suddenly seemed unsettling to him. As he sat there taking deep breaths, he noticed a man limping toward the exit. Remembering the attacker whose leg he had cut in the restroom, Reese quickly followed him outside and memorized the vehicle he was driving. The diner owner thought Reese was trying to skip out on the bill, so when he caught up to him, Reese quickly paid and casually asked about the limping man. At the same time, the sheriff wasn't sitting idle either. He drove to the veterinary clinic and used Reese's license plate to look up his information.
Texas Knowles University. No priors, pretty boring stuff.
For the sheriff, that was good news because it suggested Reese was unlikely to be a criminal. When Reese returned to the clinic, the sheriff arrived shortly afterward and greeted Amy as if they were old friends. The moment Reese saw the sheriff's dress shoes, a bad memory flashed through his mind. They looked exactly like the shoes worn by one of the men in the restroom. The sheriff merely reached out and touched Reese, but it immediately triggered him. Reese pulled out his knife and warned the sheriff not to come near Amy. Amy tried to calm Reese down, insisting that the sheriff was a good man. While Reese was distracted, the sheriff suddenly made his move, but Reese wasn't easy to handle either, and ended up pinning the sheriff against the wall with a baton. Amy quickly stepped in to break them apart. Once they were finally separated, it was the sheriff's turn to snap, and he pointed a gun at Reese. The sheriff declared that Reese had assaulted a police officer and was now under arrest. Reese could only stand there as the sheriff put handcuffs on him. Feeling guilty for being the one who had called the sheriff in the first place, Amy decided to pay Reese's bail. After Reese was released, Amy walked up and handed him a glove compartment cover. Meanwhile, another officer at the station, Jerry, sent a message to a group chat shared by 4 people. Reese and Amy went to a diner together, and during their conversation, Reese learned that the town had once relied on mining. Now that the mines were exhausted, most of the people left behind were either elderly residents or unemployed troublemakers, and Amy suspected the men who attacked Reese were among them. Since it was already late after dinner, Reese checked into a motel and planned to leave the next day. But even after 2 in the morning, he still couldn't fall asleep. Eventually, he curled up beside the small cabinet next to the bed, wrapped himself in a blanket, and finally drifted off. Not long after falling asleep, Reese discovered that someone had broken in to kill him in the middle of the night, but luckily, he managed to kill one of the attackers first. Seeing the other guy take off running, Reese grabbed his gun and chased after him. Even after shooting out one of the man's tires, the guy kept running without looking back. Reese jumped into a vehicle and took off after him. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. Backing down now could cost him his life. Reese couldn't believe these guys hadn't just attacked him in the restroom. They were still trying to kill him, so he slammed his vehicle right into theirs. That first hit felt pretty satisfying, so he did it again and again. He kept ramming the car until it finally crashed into the woods. When Reese got out to check, he found the man trapped underwater beneath the wreck. Part of him wanted to save him, but the moment he remembered what this man had done to him, he froze. By the time he snapped out of it, the man was already dead. Searching the body, Reese pulled a wallet from his pocket and found 2 photographs inside. It looked like he had just found his next targets. When Reese returned to the motel, police were already investigating the scene. He had no choice but to leave. After surviving the life or death struggle, Reese was completely exhausted. Before long, he fell asleep in his vehicle. The next day, Reese finally decided to call his father, Jess. The moment Jess heard his son was in trouble, he approached his corrections work supervisor and asked for some time off. The request was denied, leaving Jess with only one option.
Donnie, just let me go.
After quickly knocking the guards unconscious, Jess stole a vehicle and set out to find Reese. Meanwhile, Reese arrived at Amy's veterinary clinic. He desperately needed her help if he wanted to track down the other 2 men. This time, Reese finally told her the truth. The 4 men hadn't just beaten him and the dog that night. They had done much worse. He also asked about the limping man from the diner, because he remembered stabbing someone's leg during the restroom fight. Right in the middle of their conversation, the front door suddenly opened. It was the sheriff and Jerry stopping by to ask questions. Thinking fast, Amy hid Reese inside a dog kennel and threw a blanket over it. Jerry's boots stopped right beside him. Even though Reese was terrified, he knew he couldn't make a sound. One mistake and everything would be over. After the sheriff finished asking questions, Amy walked over to the kennel. Seeing Reese asleep, she quietly opened the door and stepped outside to keep watch. Just then, she received a phone call. It was Jess, and he was almost there. Meanwhile, the sheriff and Jerry had arrived at the crash site. Seeing what was left of their associate, Jerry nearly threw up. The sheriff also received a call from the corrections department, along with a photo of Jess. When Reese finally woke up, he found Jess happily devouring a meal. After discussing everything together, Amy connected the photos from the dead man with the distinctive roadside light. She figured out who he was and gave Reese his license plate number. Before long, they spotted the vehicle parked outside a bar. Jess brought Reese inside and told him to watch carefully and learn something. He yanked a plug from the wall and claimed he had accidentally scraped someone's truck. Sure enough, an angry man stormed outside cursing.
Oh, Jesus. Take another look.
Jess dragged him to a secluded spot and immediately started throwing punches. Realizing these guys were serious, the man quickly started talking. He claimed he was only the lookout outside. He never went into the restroom and wasn't one of the 4 attackers. Just as Reese was waiting for more information, the man suddenly exploded into action. He shoved Jess aside and took off running. Jess and Reese sprinted after him, but neither noticed they were heading straight toward a highway. Meanwhile, Amy was shopping at a grocery store when someone struck up a conversation. Unfortunately, it was her ex-boyfriend Harmon, and his current girlfriend was standing right beside him. The situation instantly became awkward. As Harmon walked away, Amy noticed his leg. Immediately, she remembered what Reese had told her. At that same moment, Reese and Jess had already forced their way into another man's house. It was the limping man from the diner. When Reese angrily demanded answers, the man insisted he knew nothing about what happened that night. Just as they were about to get rough with him, a car horn began blaring non-stop outside. Jess approached with his gun ready, only to discover it was Amy. The moment Amy told them she had identified the real culprit, Reese and Jess finally knew who they needed to settle the score with. After learning about his associate's death, Jerry called Harmon. The two came up with a plan to lure Reese into a trap. Jerry would take Reese's dog and use it as bait. At the same time, Jess sat down with Reese and told him to leave town that very night. After all, he still had a wedding to get to. If anything went wrong now, the wedding would be ruined. Jess promised that once he dealt with Harmon, he'd be there for the ceremony. Reese couldn't refuse his father's sincerity. Later, when he went to Amy's house to pick up his dog and belongings, he found Jerry and Amy locked in a tense standoff. Seeing that Jerry was about to kill her, Reese acted fast. Using a bright light to blind Jerry, he caught him off guard and knocked him to the ground. Call it payback. Now Reese could leave with peace of mind. Jess chose a much more direct approach when breaking into Harmon's house. He simply smashed a window. The noise immediately put Harmon on edge. He grabbed his phone and called the police, but Jess never came through that window. Instead, he slipped in through another one. Harmon's girlfriend spotted a shadow outside. She grabbed a gun, quietly stepped out, and shot Jess in the back. Jess wasn't the type to take a hit without fighting back. The moment he realized she was coming after him, he hurled a chair in her direction. Using the distraction, he subdued her and began a tense standoff with Harmon. Harmon thought Reese had broken into his house. The second he heard Jess's voice, he was completely confused and kept asking who he was. Jess never answered. Instead, he shut off the lights. Moments later, Harmon's girlfriend was dead, and her pink handgun was pressed against Harmon's head. Jess asked Harmon how it felt to be the one being threatened. This was the price for hurting his son. Just then, the sheriff arrived. Harmon noticed something sticking out of Jess's pocket. When he pulled it out, he discovered it was a wedding invitation. Meanwhile, Reese had no idea what was happening. He made it home and was greeted with a warm embrace from his fiancée. But something kept bothering him. He had sent several messages to his father and received no response. Even on the wedding day, there was still nothing. With no other choice, he left a message in Jess's voicemail. Everyone around him was celebrating the marriage, yet Reese couldn't shake the weight in his chest. After the wedding, Reese drove home with his wife. Just as she popped open a bottle of champagne to celebrate, a bullet shattered the moment. The instant Reese saw Harmon's face, he finally understood why his father had gone silent. Old grudges and fresh wounds collided. Reese was determined to make Harmon pay, and in the end, Harmon went out in flames. Ironically, Harmon's return forced Reese to realize something important. Everything he experienced in that small town had become part of who he was. Especially after enduring his wife's endless questioning, Reese finally understood where his heart truly belonged. He asked for a divorce and returned to the town once again. After visiting his father, he sent the little dog ahead as his messenger. The plane ticket in his hand would take them somewhere new, a place where they could start over, build a new life, and finally look toward a brighter future.